Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jen, also known as Boston Jen on Ravelry and Boston Jen 1 on Instagram. Today we are doing another Crafty Chat video. This is Crafty Chat number 4 with my friend Emily Straw. Welcome, Emily.
Hey, thanks for having me today. I'm excited to hang out with you and craft for the afternoon.
For sure. I can't wait to find out what you're working on. So in case folks are intrigued by the amazing things you're going to tell us about, and surely they will, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Butterfly EM4. I won't be on Instagram until after Easter for Lent. I gave up social media for Lent, but when I come back, that's where you can find me. You can also find me on YouTube under the podcast Knitting Butterflies podcast, which is not very often, but every now and then I'll share projects on there. So.
Yeah, I love that you still do it. For folks who have been in the knitting community for a long time, you may remember that Emily started out with an audio podcast called Knitting Butterflies, and then she did an interview series called Tightly Spun, and both of those were fantastic. But it's fun to see you still sort of sharing your makes on YouTube. Even if it's not all the time, I always look forward to seeing your videos pop up.
It is fun to share. It's fun to share with people what we're making. So
I know, isn't it? And that's why I'm so enjoying these crafty chats, just catching up with family and friends and seeing what you're working on. And you, like you said, you haven't really been sharing on social because you're not on Instagram during Lent, which is great. But knowing you are making just as much as you ever have. So why don't you kick off and show us something that you've been working on or something that you finished recently?
Okay. So I have recently decided to what I'm calling take a break from knitting, which means I'm just knitting socks. I knit socks all the time, and then other really easy projects. I'm not planning anything or doing anything intricate, but I actually just grafted the toe on these today. So this is a pair of socks that I finished earlier today. This is from Lion brand Mani Pedi, which I hadn't tried before.
I haven't either. Tell me about it. What do you think?
Okay, so I picked it up at Joann Fabrics. It was in the same area as the Patton's Crochet yarn, and it says that it is 75-25 superwash woolen polyamide, 50 gram skeins. This colorway is called Boot. I feel like it kind of looks like a Mardi Gras kind of color a little bit.
Yeah, it's so fun.
But I was cracking up as I watched your episode with Jen when you were saying that you had two balls of Patton's Crochet that were round in opposite directions, and that happened with these too.
Oh, funny.
And
so that's Lion brand. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was Lion brand that happened.
It happens. What is the feel of the yarn if you had to compare it to another brand folks might know?
It's a little toothy. Actually, it's pretty toothy. I would say it's as toothy as Patton's Crochet, but not as thick.
Okay.
So
that's super helpful.
Yeah. So it's a little bit lighter, but it still has that toothy feel to it. It was really enjoyable to knit, and it was easy to start. I tried to match my socks, and I only had to wind off just a little bit to make them match.
Yeah.
And I always knit my socks from the cuff down with a fish lips kiss heel every time.
I love it.
Yeah.
And are you using those, or are those going to be a gift?
These are a gift. These are a gift for, there was an intern who started in our internship on the same day as me, and she's graduating in May. And so this is her graduation present that I'll be sending to her pretty soon.
So fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
How about you? What's one of your projects?
So I've been working on socks as well, because always socks, right? But these are a little different for me. These are DK weight socks. Okay. I had some fiber or yarn left over from Goosey Fibers from when I did My Favorite Murder colorwork hat that I published. And so when Kate from Goosey Fibers and I were trying to figure out the colorways, this body color here of the sock was the original for the Stay Out of the Forest colorway, which is the name of the hat. And we ended up needing to change it a little bit, but I still had a full skein of this yarn that I wanted to use. And then this brown is the Powers of Anxiety colorway that went with it. And so I figured I would make Dan a pair of socks. I do cuff down as well. I use the OMG heel from Megan Williams. And because these are DK weight, I think I'm using US 2s instead of 1.5s. And I did 52 stitches instead of 56, which isn't that much different now that you think about it. But I think that the fabric is just tighter and they seem to fit well. Dan tried on this first one when I finished it, and he said, I think these might be the best fitting socks yet.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that's high praise. I'm on to the leg of the second one. So that's what I'll be working on while we're chatting.
So a question about DK socks, as I've actually never knit them. How well do they fit with shoes?
That's a great question. I don't think he tends to wear his thicker socks as much, but with shoes, but he mostly wears boots, whether it's like work boots to work or sort of a more like hiking boot kind of thing if he's working out in the yard. And I don't think he has any trouble fitting the thicker socks into those just because of how those kind of boots fit. He doesn't wear like dress shoes or anything pretty much ever. I think it would be too thick if you were to wear a traditional dress shoe. I think it wouldn't fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never knit a thicker pair of socks like that, and that's something I always wonder is how well would it fit in whatever it is that you're wearing at the time.
Yeah, I have a couple pair for me, and I wear them like with my winter boots to work, and then if I'm wearing like a ballet flat or something else where I'm just putting on a small sock when I get to work, and I'll change it, but I don't wear my thicker ones with shoes.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty. I like that color that you picked, so.
Thank you. And I should have mentioned that this is a 75-25 merino nylon blend. So I like finding a DK weight yarn that has some nylon in it because it will be harder wearing, which he needs.
Yeah.
So,
Perfect.
Yeah. So what else you got going?
So, because I've been taking a break from knitting, I've been doing a lot of other crafting recently. So I pulled out my loom. I have a knit night of some local friends here that we knit together on Tuesday nights, and a couple of them just bought looms. And so they've been weaving scarves, and I got super excited about that. And so I went ahead and wove this scarf.
Wow.
Let me see if I can, which side is it? This side. Okay. So that's the fabric that it created.
That is beautiful, Emily. And you have your own loom, or you borrowed one? Okay.
I have a loom. I have a Cricut rigid huddle loom, the 15-inch wide size.
Okay.
And for this one, I warped all 15 inches. So I used the entire length of the loom to warp it. So it's pretty wide.
Yeah.
And I warped it with, I can show you the color because this is the fringe. So this is the color I warped it with. This is oh goodness, what is it called? I have it. It is called Gherkin's Bucket Long Stride Sock that I bought from the Loopy U. They don't have this anymore. But it's like a the color is called gunmetal, and it's just like this steely gray, mostly gray, slightly blue color. Yeah. And it was 150 gram skein, and it took the vast majority of it to warp the loom. And then I also put in this lighter gray, which is also the same yarn, but it's like a silvery color.
Nice. And so that's both fingering weight yarn?
They're both fingering weight yarn.
Okay.
And I have 3 heddles for my loom, and I used the smallest one, so the one that I can put the most threads in. And so I just put these little stripes on the ends in the warp. And the warp took up the vast majority of the yarn. I didn't think it would take up that much yarn, and it did. And so I only had about 40 grams left once I was done warping it. Mm-hmm. And so I pulled out this Yak yarn that I had from Northern Bee Studio that I bought at Zombie Knit Apocalypse. And it's a Yak Sock Yarn. So it's 20% Yak, 10% nylon, 70% superwash merino, 100 grams. And the colorway was called Neptune, and it's like this beautiful blues and greens. And to use up the rest of the gunmetal yarn, I put the leftover of that onto one shuttle, and then I put the Yak yarn on another shuttle, and every other row I alternated which one was going, so that I could use both of them. And so I did that, and then after I got about 3/4 of the way, I was going to start running out of the gunmetal. And so then I kind of faded it, and I did 1 row of the gunmetal, 2 of the Yak. Mm-hmm. And then I eventually just made it to the Yak on this side. So I don't
looks very intentional from here.
Yeah, like, and you really can't see the difference very much. You can if you look really carefully, but I wear this thing all the time. It's really soft. It has so much drape with all the yak and the silk in it, or sorry, the yak and the nylon and the wool. It just drapes beautifully and it's so warm. And I like it's wide enough that I can wear it as a wrap or I can wear it as a scarf or whatever I want to do with it. So
it's so beautiful. And I love that little stripe in there. It just looks so polished. I love it.
Thanks. This is by far the weaving project I'm most proud of. So
yeah, I was going to say you don't do a lot of weaving projects, right? So I was wondering, as sort of a beginner-ish weaver, is it hard to estimate yarn for weaving projects? It seems like that would be a difficult thing to sort of gauge unless you're really using a pattern very
I have no idea how to estimate yarn.
Okay.
None whatsoever. When I worked at a yarn shop or at a yarn dyer, one of the dyers there is a professional weaver. So that was what she went to school for. And so I want to reach out to her and ask her some questions about estimating yardage and things like that. Because I feel like you can estimate yardage for your warp because you just measure how long are you warping it and then how many strings you need and do that math. But I don't know how to estimate the yardage for the weft. So
yeah, and I'm sure there's formulas. I'm sure there's plenty of books and resources out there. But I was just curious. That to me seems like a tricky thing to, and I'm sure beginning knitters feel the same way. But then once you've knit a large shawl or you've knit a pair of socks, you sort of know about what you need. And I'm guessing it's the same thing for weaving. But
yeah. And the other thing that I found interesting too was because I was alternating the yarns. When you put your shuttle through, so one yarn was always when the heddle, not the shuttle, when the heddle was up, and one yarn was when the heddle was down.
Okay.
But when you do that, you have to catch the ends because otherwise it was just pulling out all the time. Or it would like make a strange edge. And so I would always have to like do it a little, like if the heddle was up, I'd have to like go up over the top of the first thread and then push it through the rest of it to make it. So the edge actually kind of ended up pretty cool. I don't know if you can see it very well.
Yeah, it's almost like it loops over. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's very consistent. So whatever you figured out, it looks like you did it consistently. It looks very intentional.
Yeah. Thanks. So what else do you have?
I love it. Well, speaking of non-knitting stuff, I brought some non-knitting stuff too. So for Valentine's Day, I did some crochet heart garlands and I made like sort of Valentine's gift baskets for my family. I grabbed, this is ours. It just goes like on our entertainment center and I still had it up. So I just grabbed it to show it. But when I made them, I gave one of them to my best friend, Chris, and she loved it so much. She said, can I have another one for my birthday in April? Because then the one that I gave her for Valentine's Day, she put on the curtain rod over the window at her sink, but she wants a longer one to put over like the picture window in their kitchen. So I said, of course, you can have another one. So I started just crocheting these little hearts. The red is just some red heart soft that I've had in my stash for ages. But the white yarn, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it. The white yarn and the silver yarn both have sparkles in them. Oh yeah, I think you can see that.
Totally.
So these are really fun. I think they're different brands. The silver is this Big Twist, which I think is a Joanne brand. And these I got on clearance after Christmas. So that was handy. And then the white is actually Lion brand Woolies, which I didn't know came in a sparkle yarn. So I'm using both of these and I'm trying, she sent me the measurements, so I need to figure out how many I want based on the spacing. And then I want to try to keep as much of this as I can though, because I feel like this will be the perfect unicorn. I've crocheted a lot of unicorns, but like sparkle unicorn, come on. So I don't have many so far. This is this is what we got, mostly ends. But the other fun part about these garlands, if you didn't see it on Instagram or when I posted my show notes when I talked about these on the audio podcast, is that so I crocheted the chain between them, and I made the chain bigger between the hearts on the other ones, even for the other one in our house. And then I gave them little 2x3 pictures of members of our family hugging and kissing and little clothespins. So then they could, and I gave them more pictures than clothespins. So that was the other part of her request was, if I have another one, then I will have more room so I can put more of the photos. So the photos just hang in between.
That's adorable.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
So fun. And like, really, it's such a quick project. Like, you could make these out of anything. Like, if you had leftover sock yarn, you could hold them double or triple, or even just, hold them by themselves and just do more rounds. I will link to the pattern. It's a free pattern on a blog by Sarahndipities, and it calls for 3 rounds, which is what this is. But these smaller ones are just 1 round, and it still looks like a heart. And then you can do 2 rounds, which I think is, nope, that's 3 too. But you can do 1, 2, or 3, so you can easily make all different sizes. So it's such an easy, accessible project, which I like. So yeah, I've been having fun making hearts.
Yeah.
What else?
So how long does it take you to weave in all those ends?
Not as long as you'd think. I'll show you another crochet project in a little bit. But what I like to do if I'm sitting down, like in the evening, if Dan and I are watching watching a show or something like that, and I'm knitting for a while or crocheting for a while, one of the ways that I take breaks and give my hands and my body a rest is by doing something different. And sometimes that something different isn't just sitting there, it's weaving an end. So I'll kind of do those as I go, and then it's not as big of a deal in the end, because it can get a little gnarly because there's 2 ends on each one. But
But it's such a cute project, and I love the clothespin idea with the pictures. I feel like that just took it to the next level for me. That's wonderful.
I know. I don't remember how I came up with it now, but once I got on there and I used Google Photos, which is where I have, it backs up all the pictures from my phone, and you can type in keywords. So I just typed in hug and kiss, and I moved all those photos over into an album, made them into collages, and sent them to Walgreens. So it was like, it added maybe an extra hour to the project. So it was not a big deal. So we got to use technology to our advantage sometime.
Absolutely. That's perfect. Well, speaking of crochet, this one, there's a part of me that's a little hesitant to share this on the internet, but I'm also super excited about it.
I'm very excited to see. I can tell by your face this is going to be fantastic.
So I don't know what made this get into my head. We got 28 inches of snow last Sunday, and I don't know why that made me feel like I needed to crochet a swimming suit. So I have started, and I'm actually almost done. So this is the top.
Emily, that's gorgeous.
I'm almost done with the top, and so this is a halter top with strings that I felt like were really clever in the pattern. And then I'm working on the second strap to go around the back, but I did finish the first last night. It's probably like 20 minutes worth of work I have left on this. But this pattern is called, I have it right here. It's called the Arrowhead Halter top, and it's designed by the Knotty Lace. And this is the pattern. This pattern, let's see if I can like zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. But and then I bought it as a set. There's also bottoms for it, and I have enough yarn and all. I'm debating on making the bottoms or making a wrap and just wearing a regular swimsuit bottom, and then just making like a cute little tie wrap around the bottom or something like that.
Yeah, that could be cute.
Yeah, but it's just like this. It's pretty simple. It's just half double crochets for your more opaque fabric, and then a simple lace pattern for the top. And the pattern is not I found a link to it on Ravelry, but you have to go to her website and purchase it from the website there. it was kind of expensive. It's $12 for the set or $8 just for each piece. But she has quite a few different patterns on there. But I didn't see any projects for Unravelry. And there are definitely some errors in the pattern. I don't know that she had this tested at all. There's a couple times when I've been like, nope, that's not accurate at all.
Okay, that's helpful. So if you're a reasonably good crocheter, they were obvious to you that like that didn't make sense.
Yeah, like it would say, or maybe it's just because I haven't done a whole lot of crochet patterns. I don't know, but there was definitely a couple times when it would say specific things, and I was like to do this certain thing twice, and there wasn't a place to do it twice, and so I just did it once and then kept going, and then the next row was correct or things like that. The other thing too is that the pattern is not super size inclusive. It claims to go up to a cup size of F, but there's no schematic at all. Even though it tells you to take measurements, there's no schematics, and then there's only 2 sizes to knit. So you knit one size for cups A through D, or A through C, and then one size for cups D through F. And
interesting.
And yeah, and so I used to work at Victoria's Secret. I used to sell wedding dresses. Like I've done a lot of sewing and knitting. I understand how that part of the body is shaped, and there's no shaping on it at all. So it's just like a strip on the bottom, and then you start making the triangles at the top. And so one alteration that I did, I crocheted the smaller size, but I added some darts down the middle. And I don't think you can see them because they're pretty well hidden, but I just added a couple increases. I held it up. I held up the band to myself, and then I measured right down the middle of each breast. And then I marked that with a stitch marker, and then I increased a couple times to make some darts. And this is my 3rd attempt at making this because I have ripped it out twice because I didn't like how it was fitting. And I tried this one on last night this is the first time I actually finished it, but the shaping made all the difference because crochet fabric is so dense, and that part of breasts are so not they just will go wherever you kind of shove them. And when it's just flat, then they were sticking out the bottom, and that was not flattering at all. And so I wanted to give them a little bit of more of a shape to rest in. And it actually looks really good, and I'm super excited about it.
I bet. Well, and because it's a dense fabric, like you said, you obviously don't want that to be see-through. Even when you were holding it up, you could see how well sort of those cups are formed by the way that you did the fabric. So I think that mod makes a lot of sense. And I think it's interesting. I haven't crocheted a lot of garments, but I have crocheted a few now. And I've been finding a similar thing that even with paid patterns, there isn't really sort of that same standard of having schematics, having more detailed instructions for different sizes that clearly need it to be shaped differently to actually well fit that size. So I wonder why that is. I think partially it's probably just that it's not expected, and so it's hard to probably raise that bar. Whereas in knitting, I think maybe even 10 or 15 years ago, folks didn't expect it, but once people started doing it, it really caught on because it gives you such a better shot at getting a piece that fits the way that you want it to fit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I've thought about emailing the pattern creator and just letting them know, hey, here are a couple errors that I found, or here's a schematic would have been really helpful, because it kind of does give it shows you where to take your measurements, but then it just says I don't understand at all how to use the measurements that it gives. It shows you how to measure your bust and your hips and things like that, but I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and I was like, I don't understand how to use this in any way, shape, or form. And so but I also I was excited. I was debating between maybe getting some bra foam, some foam cups to sew in.
I was gonna ask you about that.
And when I tried it on last night, you actually couldn't see through it. You couldn't see a difference. And I didn't need it. Everything was keeping its shape the way that I wanted without the foam cups, which was super surprising. I might still get them. And then I'm also planning on crocheting another one, but one size bigger. I'm going to try the bigger size and just see if I can get a little bit more coverage, especially on the cup, and see what happens. Oh, but I didn't tell you the yarn. The yarn is Aunt Lydia's Crochet Cotton Fashion 3 from Joanne Fabric again.
Okay.
There we go. Now you can see it. And so this is my other color that I have, is this gray. And so I'm going to try and make the bigger size out of the gray, and just see if I can get a little bit more coverage. And
so that's pretty thin, right? Do you remember what hook size you were using?
A 1.
Okay.
So I had to buy, or sorry, a B, not a 1, that's knitting, B, which is 2.25 millimeters.
Okay.
So, which is the size that the pattern calls for, but the pattern also calls for a DK weight cotton yarn.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. It's a cascade yarn, and that would make such a thick fabric. And so, as I was experimenting with gauge and things like that, I actually got gauge perfectly with this B and this with this yarn, and I really like the fabric of it too. So that was surprising.
Very cool. I was going to ask if you were planning on sewing in any inserts, and like you said, you may not need to. One thing though is that if you have a bathing suit top or a bikini top that has those foam inserts, I sometimes, like, they come out when you wash them and things like that, and I kind of mix and match whichever ones I can find into my bathing suits. But I also sometimes, like, if I'm just wearing a bralette, sometimes I'll just put them in there for just a little extra coverage. So you might even just be able to slip one in, depending on how fitted that top is. You may not need to sew it in. If you wanted just a little extra security, you could probably just place them in and test it out in your own backyard and see if they stay. But
yeah, that's a good idea. And honestly, because of the yarn that it's made out of, I've thought about just wearing it as like a bralette or something too, just to get more use out of it this summer too. So
yeah, I might need to make one. I think I favorited like 20 last year, different like bralette kind of tops or like tank tops or just different things. And maybe this is the summer that I actually make one. We can twin out virtually with our bathing suits.
Right?
So fun. And I think that's a great idea of like, I'd be more leery of the bottoms falling down than of like the top not staying in place. But yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't just wear a coordinating bottom from an existing suit and then just wear that for your top.
Exactly. And like I said, if you could do like a cute little wrap or something too, like that would be a super fun way to make it coordinate and not worry about it. So.
Yeah, and you could do that like really open or lacy or something to get like a lot of fabric quickly and to kind of coordinate with it.
Exactly.
So fun.
Yay.
I love it.
What else do you have?
So speaking of crochet, in my giant basket here, I have been working on a crochet blanket that I am thoroughly obsessed with. So I just started this. Let me just keep it folded in half. That might be more manageable. This is the it's the Hydrangea stripe blanket from Lucy of Attic 24. She does the pattern that a lot of people use for like the granny stripe and projects like that. And I was originally planning to do like all grays and oatmeals and then this pink, trying to use up some leftovers. And so I got started on the project. You start sort of at this side here and work your way down. And I didn't realize that I was following the instructions improperly, but I liked the results better. So I kept going. So it's not that I'm doing it wrong. I'm using the right stitch pattern. So see how you have like these shells that stack up on each other? The way that the pattern calls for you to do it after the first row is that you would go across with one color and then back across with the same color and then pick up and start another color. So you basically have 2 rows of each color. I didn't realize you were supposed to do that. So I just have 1 row across of each color. And I think it actually makes the fabric look quite a bit different. The shells really stack up more than they did the way that the original pattern is written, which is what I like. It does mean that I have more ends to weave in, which is fine. So like I said, I originally was using some of this Vanna's Choice yarn that's kind of tweedy. And then I've got some Crafty Sprightly acrylic. So I have a whole ball of this. And then I think I had 2 of these ones, and then a cream. So my original plan was just to use the neutrals in the pink. And then I thought, well, what if I run out of the pink? And so I went through my acrylic yarn that I have kind of set aside mostly for toys that I make for the kids. And I started pulling through. I have a bunch of these Knit Picks Brava worsted minis that I purchased as part of a kit, and I actually bought several different kits, so I've got a bunch of overlap. But I started pulling in all of these colors, and then when you mix it in with these earthy tones, to me it was just like English garden or like something to that effect. And then the more colors I pulled in, the more I liked just how absolutely varied the colors were. And I kept finding more and more and more and more. So it's really a great scrap project. And I'm using up even more of my scraps than I planned. And I made it smaller than what's called for. This is a baby blanket. This is supposed to be the width, which every time I get worried about the size, Dan always says, blankets are better when they're bigger. Who cares if it's a baby blanket? but you'll see here. So I end up with ends on both sides that need to be woven in, but I do them as I go. So you can see I only have the last couple stripes worth that still need to be woven in. And I find that weaving in ends in crochet is really easy. The way that the fabric forms, it's very easy to just bring your tapestry needle through like those shells and stuff like that, and it just goes right through and kind of just wants to tuck in and stay right there. So yeah, it's working out quickly. I probably have 12 or 14 inches worth of height already done. So it's coming along quickly. And it's also one of those things of like, I have deadline knitting, like the hearts are for Chrissy's birthday. I have another project for Riley, and this is the only thing I want to work on. You know how that goes?
Of course. Of course. It's gorgeous though. When you said the name, the Hydrangea stripes, I instantly thought of a garden too. And so as you were describing bringing in all these colors that look like a garden, I was like 100%. I totally agree.
Right? It's like the rock wall and the grass and the flowers and I think that the name was inspired by a kit of yarn that Lucy used for the original sample. And I think it was also like a mini skein kind of kit. And that was the name of it. So definitely go check it out. I will link to that and everything else obviously down below, but it does look quite different, I think, from the original. I also so it's basically just a cluster stitch and then you do a single crochet in between each of them, but I like the way that you can see how those stack up. And again, it just looks really different from the original, and neither is sort of like right or wrong. Technically, it all works. The fabric is the same, just the color sequencing is different, but I love it.
So did you say that that's a baby blanket?
It is.
Okay.
Yep. So not my baby, hashtag not my baby. But all of my cousins are having babies, and the most recent one was actually already born in January. So I'm a little behind schedule, but with COVID, we haven't really seen anybody. So I knew I would get one cast on, and it's finally on, and it doesn't look like it's going to take that long. So
it's gorgeous. And I actually really appreciate how you're showing super fun projects to make with acrylic yarn. I don't know about you, but like I've been going to Michael's and things like that more recently for other crafty projects to get stuff. And of course, I always have to stop by the yarn section and look, and they have such interesting yarn. And I keep looking at that stuff when I want to try using that yarn in something, but I don't know what to make it into. And you show so many interesting projects that are possibilities for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really do like sharing projects that are accessible in lots of different ways, whether it's the skill level or the materials or things like that, because especially these days, folks who maybe weren't on a very tight budget before might be on a tight budget, or circumstances might be different. And I don't think that means that you have to make things that are subpar. There's plenty of wonderful, affordable craft project materials out there. So I love sharing it. And if my sharing it means that I can say, oh, 1 out of 10 yarns really wasn't great, skip that one, but buy some of these, then I think it's so fun. You know, like I would like to share that with folks. So I actually have my last project that I'll show you is another one of those kind of ones. So that'll be a fun little fun little chat. But I'm guessing, knowing you, you have something else you can show me.
I have one other project to show you.
Okay.
So this one, my friends Becky and Sarah got me into cross stitching again. And so this is a pattern by Stitch Lover Shop on Etsy. And when I saw it, I had to make it. And so this is how far I am right now. And it's a brain with the left half of the brain just as a normal brain, and then the right half being just a really beautiful bouquet of flowers.
That is gorgeous.
I'm really, really excited about it. I started it right after Christmas, I think just a couple of days after Christmas. And so it's taken me a few months to get this far. When I sit down and work on it, I get so much done quickly. I'll switch sides so you can see my face too. But when I sit down and get it done, it goes really, really fast, and then I'll put it down for a couple of weeks, and then I'll come back to it and that kind of stuff. But just some of the interesting things I've been doing. My sister is like a master cross stitcher. Like, she's won tons of ribbons. She's all into like the Russian cross stitch patterns, and she knows all these beautiful tips and tricks to make it like perfect. Mm-hmm. And I am not that way, but I'm really, really, really proud of it. And some things I'll do, like, especially like this is a lot of white that you have to do to fill this in, and it gets kind of boring. And so what I've been doing is I've been doing the outlines of the grays ahead of time. And then when I like when I go to knit night, or when I want to just sit and watch a show and do this mindlessly or something, then I'll go back in and fill in a whole bunch of white in one shot.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And I've been trying to balance it between the left and the right side, so I don't get bored doing all of that, and giving myself something fun to work on with the right side. And so there's that. The other thing too is that about half of the threads that I'm using are from my stash, which the vast majority of came from my mother-in-law about 15 years ago. She brought me from Michigan this huge box of cross-stitch materials because she said her eyes had gotten too bad and she couldn't do it anymore. And so that's kind of cool to incorporate that in there. But the white that I'm using it just said white. And I've been using it, and I'm getting close to running out. And so I went to the store and I picked up the B5200, which I think is like the bright white. It's way too bright for this. And I tried blending it, and that didn't work. So I had to rip all that out. And then I bought regular white, and that's also too bright. And I don't know if it's because this is like 20 years old or how that's changed. And so I picked up ecru instead, and I'm trying to blend it in. And I don't think you can see where it's blended at all, but it took a few tries to kind of make that color blend in pretty well. So that was just kind of an adventure, but I think it's special having stuff that she gave me in there too. So
I love that so much. So are you doing, is it like DMC? Is that kind of the standard craft store brand of embroidery floss? That's what you're using?
Yeah. I don't know if that is like the standard, but that's the colors that are given in the pattern. Okay. There were a couple things that I wish that the pattern writer had done a little bit differently, and it's just me being picky. Like on the white and on the grays, she marked the really dark gray as like this really light X shape, and then the white and then the medium gray are like a thick, like a big circle and a big triangle. So it's kind of hard to tell the difference. And I almost wish that she had switched those symbols, like symbols that take up less ink for the lighter colors, and then the darker colors take up more ink, so you can kind of see more of that depth.
Yeah.
But I don't know if those are like standard symbols or if that's me just being picky. But it's just something that I'm thinking about as I'm learning, like, oh, this would make it easier for the maker to see exactly what's going on more at a glance, because sometimes in those sections I'll have to color it with a light highlighter, and then I'll do that section and then go back through with a darker highlighter and mark out what I finished. So.
Okay, that makes sense. So when you buy a cross stitch pattern, are you buying a PDF like when we buy knitting and crochet patterns? Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, this pattern was $4.80. And the fabric wasn't very expensive. Like, it's not a very expensive project. like when I compare it to knitting, obviously it's very different, and you're getting different things, but I want to say it was less than $20 total for everything, and it's been keeping me busy for a lot of time. So
that's a lot of value for your money. And how big is that hoop? Would you say like 7 or 8 inches? Or it's a pretty big project.
I think it's a 14-inch hoop.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's 12 inches. I don't remember for sure. I know that the pattern will fit in it completely, but I think I'm gonna have to move it down a little bit to do this part. But then after I'm done, I'll wash it and I'll have my sister teach me how to wash it and block it and things like that. And then I'll put it back in the hoop and just display it in the hoop. I'm planning on hanging it right here. This is my little work area where I talk with clients, and I think this would kind of be the perfect thing to have hanging up in the background. And so, yeah.
I love it. It's really beautiful. It's so you, like that both sides thing. I love it. So it's funny, yesterday I went out shopping to my favorite secondhand store, Savers, with my mom, and she was looking at different, like, like the wooden signs that they have at like Home Goods and stuff that have like clever sayings on them and stuff. And we're looking at different ones, and they had like weird pricing on them. Like most of them were like $3 and $4, and then one of them would be like $6. And we're like, what? They're the same thing. Like, what's happening? So then we got looking at all sorts of other prints and stuff and looking at the different prices. And I found this, which is cross stitch. And it looks like the geese are like embroidered.
Yeah.
And it's little, but I was like, I picked it up just to see how much this would be when you compare it to like the cheap signs that they were selling, like from Home Goods secondhand. This print was $2. And I was like, someone made this.
Oh my
I couldn't
God.
leave it there. Like, this is a little sort of more like country traditional than our house is, but I don't care. I couldn't leave it there. It's really beautiful. The texture of it, especially on those geese, is just, oh, I loved it. So, and it's funny, I brought it down because I know that you'd been cross stitching, and I was like, well, I don't cross stitch, but I'm rescuing cross stitch where I can find it. So, yeah, so cute.
It's beautiful. So, and that's the thing that's always hung me up with cross stitching. Like, what am I going to do with it when I'm done? And that kind of thing. And it makes me sad because I feel like that's how pieces like that end up in places like Savers. And I'm like, oh, somebody worked so hard on this, and that's really sad and stuff. But then sometimes we find pieces that just really stick out, and it's like, I want to have that up in my house. I have exactly a plan for it, like that kind of thing. So
yeah. Do you have any of your finished cross stitch projects hanging in your house now?
Not hanging. I used to have, when my husband and I first got married, we were big into lemons. I don't understand why, but that was like our theme for our kitchen was lemons. And so I made this beautiful, like the old timey shipping labels for like crates of food.
Yes.
Yes. And so it was like a lemon crate logo design, and it was gorgeous. And we had that hanging up in our house for ages, and I don't know where that is now. I know I took it down. I feel like I took it down and then something spilled on it.
Okay.
That's what my head is saying, but I don't actually remember for sure.
So maybe it's in storage or something.
It could be in like
point.
Yeah, in like a bin in the storage room or something like that. I don't remember what I've done. Okay, so I've cross stitched a couple of things for other people. I made this beautiful like thing for my cousin when he and his wife got married, and it was like this big wreath of the flowers and the colors that they used, and it had their names and their date that they got married. It was gorgeous, and they got married right after we did, and so it was like a special thing that we were all doing together. And she got pregnant right after they got married too. And so she was experiencing morning sickness, and I had just finished their cross stitch. And so I put together a box that had like saltine crackers and what to expect when you're expecting, and ginger pops and like all these cute little pregnancy things. And I was also a poor college student, and I couldn't spend the $120 to get it framed. So I just folded it up and I put it into the bottom of the box wrapped in tissue paper, and then everything else was wrapped in tissue paper. And she emailed me the nicest email when she got the package, and she was like, this was so thoughtful. I'm grateful for the crackers. And she listed every single thing in that package except for the cross stitch. and I talked to
I
my
don't want to
aunt
hear
Lisa.
the end of the story.
I think it got thrown away.
Thrown out with the box.
Because it was in the bottom of the box, and I've never actually told her that, but I'm like, oh.
Oh, my heart just broke a little bit. Oh, I thought you were going to say that somehow the other things in it like damaged it because you didn't put something else around it. Yeah. That's even worse.
So I've done a few projects like that I've given to people, and I've never known what happens to them after that. So.
Yeah, well, and sometimes not knowing is better, clearly, because otherwise you could just assume it's hanging in her house and you just haven't seen it.
Maybe it very well could be. Who knows? So maybe they were poor college students too. Maybe they couldn't spend the money and get it framed either. So
yeah.
So what's your other project that you brought for today?
So the other project I brought is another birthday project. It is a sweater for my niece Riley, who turns 13 in April. And so I asked her, what did she want for her birthday? And did she want like a toy, or what did she want? And she came back like 30 seconds later with, I want the sweater that you and Auntie Meg and Auntie Chrissy have, which is this. So this is the Nanaimo cardigan by Tara-Lynn Morrison. Let me just stand up a little bit. So it's a big oversized but cropped sweater. I made ours all a little bit longer than it called for, just because we're late 30s or early 40 somethings ladies, and sometimes having a little bit more coverage is nice. But Riley's I probably will do more per the pattern. But speaking of affordable, accessible projects, I'm using Lion Brand Woolies Thick and Quick. And Riley picked this beautiful color. It's called Stormfront. So it's a nice light gray. And I think you can see there's bits of like blues and purples in it. I mean, blues and pinks. So this yarn is very washable and easy to care for. So for the other two that I made for my best friends out of the same yarn, different colorways, I washed them on gentle, I threw them in the dryer, and they came out perfect. Mm-hmm. So this will be great for a teenager and for her dad who does the laundry and goodness knows what happens there, right? So like accessible in terms of doesn't require special care. So I think that's important. And then in terms of pricing, I purchased 5 skeins of this to do hers. I probably won't use all 5. I think I did use 5 when I did the size medium. I've done both the extra small and the medium large. They don't fit that differently, especially because it's oversized. So this will still end up being about a $50 project. So it's not cheap, but I could easily spend $50 if I bought her a couple things. And I think having something handmade is priceless. So anyways, all that to say, affordable, but maybe not necessarily within everybody's budget, but more affordable than buying indie dyed yarn, probably. And in a super bulky yarn, it can be hard to find. And even with this, they sell this at our local big box stores, but I couldn't get 5 of them anywhere. And so I was actually really worried that this wasn't going to come in time. Her birthday is April 8th. And so I ordered it the night she asked for it from Lion Brand directly, and there was warnings all over their website about delays in shipping, which I appreciate their candor. I don't want to expect that it's coming and it's not. And it said it would be here by March 22nd, and it came on the 19th.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Wow.
Realistically, I probably wouldn't have gotten out to the store before it came. So yeah. that could be a fluke. I mean, go by their guidance. And I think I did pay an extra $1 or $2 for like the one level up from standard shipping was like not expedited, but like premium or something. So I think I spent $2 on that, but it's going to buy me extra time. So you start, it's a top down, very basic cardigan. This is the collar. You have to do about 6.5 inches. And then you start increasing out for the body. And it's got it's hard to tell, but they're balloon sleeves. Mm-hmm. And again, I think I did the sleeves a little longer than called for. I don't think the ribbing's supposed to be quite this long, but I might do the same for her sleeves. But it's a fun project. I think the ribbing is on US 13 needles. Then I think I use 15s and 17s or 15s and 19s or something crazy. So it works up really quickly. It's a very easy to follow pattern, which is wonderful. I think it was maybe a $10 pattern, but it's very well written. And if I'm making 4 of them out of it, I've certainly gotten my money's worth. So no complaints there. I do find, though, I'm glad that this came early. I would push through and get it done for her on time. But especially when you're not used to working on such big needles, it kind of does wear on your hands and your wrists in a different way. And so going back and forth between projects on smaller needles is good. So I definitely will rotate through different projects just to give my body a break.
I love the color of that. And I've been admiring your sweater this whole time. I'm like, it's so beautiful. And the closure that you have on it is perfect.
Isn't this great? I got this at my local yarn shop, Stacy Stitches, and she was so good at working with me. And I find that most yarn shops are like this. So if you are ever in need of something specific, I would say always try to go to your local yarn shop. When I was trying to find one to match the one for my friend Chrissy, hers was like a charcoal, dark charcoal base that had like maroons and plums and stuff in it. And she went through with me on the website on her phone, and we scrolled through 14 pages of shawl pins to find the one that matched that sweater. And then I ordered one for me too. But I was like, you're not getting that if you go to Joann. So like there's a time and a place to buy something from a big box store. But then there's also, such advantages to going to those local shops. Like this matches perfectly. And so the other thing that I guess I'll say is for the other two, for the gift items, I think that's where it's a great use of my time and energy to use sort of the commercial yarn that's easy to care for, that's less expensive, because that means I can gift more. When I made mine, instead of using a super bulky yarn, I wanted mine to be woolly. So the Woolies Thick and Quick does have some wool. It's 79% acrylic, 20% wool, and 1% other fiber. I've never noticed that before. So there's not a lot of wool in here, but that's part of why it's easy to wash and wear. With mine, I used 3 strands held together. So I did a strand of Cascade Eco wool in just like a cream color, Lions brand fisherman's wool, and I think it was called oatmeal. It's like a heathery kind of tweedy kind of yarn, and then 1 strand of Noro Ito, which is a color changing yarn. And so that's really what gives this all of the different colors. So same sweater, same great look, totally different kind of look and feel based on the yarn. Although I think I'm going to have to make myself something out of this too. It's just this is so warm and this is so cool, but I definitely want something out of this now.
It's perfect. So fun. And it's funny because I think when you and I first met, you were not a sweater knitter. Like you had done a couple sweaters, but you hated making garments. And now you make them all the time. And it's so fun to watch you.
Isn't it so? I just love, like you said, watching how people grow and change and what they get into. And I also just think every time people share, it makes me want to do more and try something else. And you were knitting socks and sweaters way before me. And I didn't knit socks for a long time. I was like, why do people make socks? That seems crazy. And now I knit, you know what I mean? So I think if you can be open to you know what, maybe I'll just give it a try. If you don't enjoy it, you don't ever have to do it again. And it's yarn, you can rip it out, There's not really a lot to lose if you can just stay open-minded. Speaking of sweaters, what are you wearing?
Oh, this is my All of the Lights cardigan by Joji Locatelli. And I knit this out of Lavender Loon's DK base, which is an MCN base. So it's so luxurious and so soft. And it's really, really cabled, and it goes halfway down my legs. There's pockets in it. The pocket detail is one of the things I'm most proud of knitting. Actually, this sweater is one of the things I'm most proud of knitting ever in my life. Just, it's so finished. Everything about it is just polished and finished. And this was my quarantine sweater. I started knitting it shortly after the quarantine started, and then I finished it later this summer. And I live in this sweater. I've worn it multiple times a week, every single week. I don't wash my sweaters a whole lot with the wool, but I've had to wash this one twice because I wear it so often that it just gets grody and nasty, especially because I put thumb holes in it too. So I can wear them like that, or it has really long ribbing so I can fold it down. And but because I wear them with the thumb holes so often, it just gets pretty dirty right here. And so I've had to wash it a few times, but I think this is maybe my favorite knitting project I've ever made, and it's for sure my most loved and most worn project I've ever made too.
It's nice when those two things come together, because that's not always true. You can love making something and then not love or need or use the finished product. So I love when they come together. And I feel like you talked about that sweater a lot in one of your recent videos, so I will link to that. So if folks want to see the whole sweater and all the pictures and the videos, it was really exciting to see it come together. It's beautiful. I love it. It looks so good on you too, which is
thank you.
Bonus.
I think this is one of my favorite yarn bases I've worked with too. I have a few other superwash merino sweaters that I do wear, but this is the one that this one is definitely it's more pricey, or it's definitely pricier because it's an MCN blend, but I feel like this is the kind of yarn that I have a list of like sweater projects if I reach a big goal. Like I'm planning on buying a sweater quantity once I finish this semester, because they told us this would be the hardest semester of my program, and then after I graduate. And so I'm like, when I get through those goals, then I can get myself that sweater and just keep my eyes on the long term.
That's a great idea. And I mean, when you think about how many days you've already worn that sweater, when you divide the cost of the materials by that, it's well worth it. And if you already know it's a base you enjoy wearing, as long as you choose a pattern that you like. And again, if you don't end up liking it, you can rip it out and use the yarn again. It's so great.
Do it again. It's fine. It's fine. So.
Well, Emily, this has been so much fun. I would love it if you came back anytime you're interested and share with us. I'm sure you'll have many other things to share in the next coming months, and I'm dying to see how that bathing suit situation turns out, because I think I watch this space. I will probably be making one too.
This took me, I did almost all of this yesterday. So it takes like no time at all too. And so I think we need to make that happen. I don't know that I'll be posting pictures of it on the internet, but I will send you some.
Yeah, same. I know. I was thinking about that out loud in my head as I was saying things out loud, that I don't know how willing I'll be to share that, but maybe some selectively posed, relatively modest shots. We'll see.
Exactly. Well, this was fun. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you all for watching. Again, links to everything will be posted down below. And if somehow I've missed anything, don't hesitate to reach out. And if I have a question, I'll reach out to Emily. We'll get to the answer. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And leave comments below if there's other things you'd like to hear me share, or other folks you'd like to see on the channel. I always love hearing what you guys are looking for. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and we'll catch you again soon. Bye.
Bye.